Well, the Arizona Cardinals aced round one of the 2024 NFL draft. What does it mean? How does it set them up? And what are we looking at for round two and round three tonight? Let's discuss.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Cardinals. Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner _ follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen, free wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So, no funny business. No drafting a quarterback in the top 10 like the Atlanta Falcons. No trade back. No trade up from 27. Very stable, functional, stick and pick at 4 and 27. 4 was no surprise, Marvin Harrison Jr. There was no funny business that happened before the Cardinals, so it made it easy for the Cardinals to say, you know what? Let's take potentially the best player in the draft. Cool. And they did. And he's happy to be here. He and Paris Johnson are reunited. And I was asked when I did, a quick spot on Locked On NFL for, right after the Cardinals picked. And you can check it out on the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcast. There was a very, very interesting question that was asked me. The question was, does Paris Johnson and Marvin Harrison Jr. having played in college together mean anything moving forward? And while, my answer was pretty much this. While it's a good story and fun that two young players who are elite at their craft are playing on the same NFL team, it's not an original story. But for the Cardinals, and every day, as you'll know that I believe this, and this is what I've been yearning for here for the team, is actual cohesion, actual teammates. One of the phrases that I always use is the Arizona Cardinals don't have very many Arizona Cardinals on the roster over the last handful of years, pretty much the last decades when Steve Keim was GM. It's hard to build a culture and momentum when you're constantly adding players from other teams to build out your roster because you're unable to build through the draft. So with how fragile this state is of the Arizona Cardinals, having two guys that have played together before, incredible. And the fact that they're both really good, incredible. So it's just going to add to this team building that's taken place since the beginning of 2023. And while this seems very elementary and seems very basic and seems very much like what a team who's actually in contention would not be going through. That's because it is. But you can't compare the journey of the Arizona Cardinals to any other organization, nor should you. There's always going to be the haves and the have-nots. The Arizona Cardinals are one of the most losing franchises in the history of the sport. They're a laughingstock at times. They're indifferent by national media members more times than not. So when you're trying to completely change the face and the foundation of an entity that's been around for decades, you got to start at the studs. You've got to start at the foundation. That stud thing was actually pretty cool if I was able to run with it. The play on words, and I just wasn't able to. I damn me for that. You got to start at the studs. Really good. You can use it. I said it by accident. And what they did last year through a very ho-hum free agency, bringing pretty much in Kazir White, and a quote-unquote boring draft, drafting players of need who could potentially be elite at their craft, having a boring offseason again, bringing in players of need, a position of need where they need talent infused, and having a pick at 20, pick at 4, and pick at 27, positions of need for guys who could be elite at their craft. Look at what you got. You've got the makings of a roster that can have a complete overhaul in 2 years. Which, while 2 years sounds like a long time, oh, Kyler Murray's on his contract, blah, blah. Okay. Look at how much bad quarterback. 6 quarterbacks are taken in the top 12. You appreciate Kyler Murray yet? All of this is building into something bigger. This is what slow and steady looks like. I think Monti Ossenfort knocked it out of the park yesterday. Marvin Harrison Jr. 4, fantastic. They've got their wide receiver 1, coupled with Trey McBride, Michael Wilson, Greg Dortch, James Conner. The offensive line has improved in Kyler Murray. That offense can be a top 12 offense next year. And that's not far-fetched by any stretch. So the Darius Robinson pick, he's not really a household name. He made all SEC. But this, I wrote down some like a cheat sheet. So you can get comfortable with Darius Robinson immediately. And talking about what I just discussed regarding the culture build and the players that Monti Ossenfort is drafting, not just on the field, but off the field, what kind of people they are. This guy knocks it absolutely out of the park. So he's 6'5", 285. Ran a 4.940, which is pretty good for an edge rusher. He was a captain for the last 2 years at Missouri. And before I talk about the most impressive part, which isn't what I'm going to say now, he switched to DN from interior of the defensive line last year after playing 2 years in the interior. So he can play both, depending on scheme, depending on base defense, depending on personnel, depending on opponent. He can play both, which is fantastic. He's a bull rusher. This is something that I saw. I can't remember who it was, but I wish it was a national media member who said this. He does a lot of things that don't show up in the stat sheets, which is something that can be looked at as a strength and not just, relying on sack totals like we did when we were, gauging Chandler Jones's effectiveness when he was here. It was sacks or nothing. This dude forces interceptions by pressure. This dude is relentless against the quarterback. This dude can rush on the interior and on the edge. And that's something the Cardinals desperately need to pair up with B.J. Ojulari. So it's an absolute home run. But most importantly, especially now, especially with NIL running rampant, this dude took some of his NIL money, bought a bunch of backpacks, and donated it to kids, started a charity, started a nonprofit. You want guys that can do both? He's a guy that can do both. And the Cardinals not only need guys, but they need guys who are going to be for the team, not for themselves. And this is slowly but surely turning into something that Cardinals could compete this year. They could compete this year. In what capacity? Not sure yet, because tonight's going to be the biggest one, 4 picks. We'll see what happens. He may only pick twice, Monty. He may trade up with all 3 third-rounders to get back in the second round. We have no idea what the guy's going to do. What we do know is, and we'll talk about in the final segment, is there's a lot of first-rounders still out there. What does the current roster construction look like? What are we looking at right now? What holes need to be filled? And how massive were the draft picks from last night in regard to roster construction? I'll talk about it next. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked on Cardinals is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for a small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board, man. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And also,
this episode of your favorite Locked On podcast is brought to you by the best meal kit service in the game, Home Chef. No more having to answer the dreaded question, what are we going to do for dinner tonight? Thanks to Home Chef and their chef-designed recipes that are delivered directly to my door, all pre-packaged, pre-portioned. They even peel the garlic cloves for you. And each recipe, one of my favorites, blackened mahi, comes with a full page of easy-to-read instructions that include customization options and pictures to guide you along the way through the step-by-step process so you don't have to ask, is that what chard looks like? I cannot recommend Home Chef enough, especially right now, because for a limited time, Home Chef is giving Locked On listeners 18 free meals, free dessert for life, and of course, free shipping on your first box if you head to homechef.com/lockedon today. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 18 free meals and free dessert for life. Yes, you heard that right. Homechef.com/lockedon. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert.
Second segment, Locked On Cardinals. Alex Clancy here. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen. Yeah. It was a fantastic night last night. It was just fantastic. The Cardinals got their guy. They kept it easy, kept it simple. And they got their dude. And then Darius Robinson, here's the thing. And I'll expound upon this in the final segment a little bit more. Most first rounders, if it were any other year, that went 13 to 25, many of them would have been in the top 10. What are we doing here? 6 quarterbacks in the top 12, 3 others were receivers. It's there 13 players went before the first defensive player went. It's what are we doing? And you know who reaped the benefits? The Arizona Cardinals. And when you look at where they're at roster construction-wise, obviously the offense is ahead of the defense. But it's amazing when you add one player, how much it really ties the room together. We're going to Big Lebowski. Really ties the room together. Kyler Murray, James Conner, RB2, whether it's Michael Carter or otherwise. Jonah Williams, maybe Elijah Williams. I don't know what they're going to do with the left guard position. Schulte, Froholt, Will Hernandez, Paris Johnson. You got your offensive line that's better than it's been in a decade. You got Trey McBride. And then you've got Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson, and Greg Dortch. Through round one. I'd be shocked if they didn't take another skill position player on offense tonight. So the offense, I said yesterday before they actually took Marvin, is pretty much complete. Sure, you can add some veteran pieces. Of course, you need offensive line depth. They've still got 9 picks, and they've got 5 between the second and fourth round. The defense is where it gets a little bit hairy, but this is where the incomplete can turn into complete pretty quickly. There's still, free agency until camp, so they can add some key pieces. I think it's really going to be predicated upon who's there at 35. There are 7 guys that were mocked to go in the first round that are still there at 35. Johnny Newton, who was the one that I had picked. Cooper DeJean, who's looked at as the best corner, one of the best corners with all-pro potential. There's so many guys that the Cardinals could snag at 35. It makes me think, if Monti wants to be opportunistic, very rarely in a draft do a chunk of projected first rounders drop into the second. A chunk. And that's what we've got right now at the fingertips of the Arizona Cardinals. So defensively, roster construction-wise, it's been the same. Darius Robinson, you add Justin Jones and Bilal Nichols to play in the interior of the defensive line. You got Bijay Ojulari. That's going to be your front four depending on, base set and scheme. You got Mac Wilson and Kazir White playing in the middle of the defense. You've got Zaven Collins playing on the outside, again, depending on scheme. Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson are set and forget over the top. And you got Sean Murphy-Bunting, Garrett Williams. And they need to sign more corners, and they need to draft more corners. But you can see It's starting to mold into shape. Boring is good. Boring wins. I called the veterans who are, B- talent, C+, B- B talent, the shrubbery around the rose bush, the roses, are going to be the young studs that are drafted this year and they were drafted last year. So the TBD is really on the side of the defense now, as it was last year, and this is all part of the plan. They've shored up the offensive line and defensive line this offseason better than it's been in a long time, collectively. Defensive line was a strength, the offensive line wasn't good, and then vice versa. So now, when you look at what to do tonight, what do you do in the second and third round? Do you go only defense? Do you take 2 corners, another pass rusher, and another defensive lineman if they draft all 4? And just say, you know what? If 80% of these picks work over the last 2 years, this is a playoff team. And all of the players are on rookie scale contracts. Do you just go all defense? Is that the plan? Is that what Monty has up his sleeve, that rascal? Or do you look at this year, you know what? It's going to be a 2-year. You're going to make some splash signings on defense next year, have all your draft picks, and you just go and you put out one of the best offenses in the NFL. Let's discuss it. What will day 2 bring for the Arizona Cardinals? Let's discuss it next. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I've been told I'm a competitive person, man. You think that's true? Every day, do you think that's true? Okay, well, yeah, I have a competitive side. We all do. My competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist of Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with my friends. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly, but now I can also heist their vaults of riches for myself. And the leaderboard show who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. But it's not just competitive side of me that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store and Google Play. Final segment, Locked On Cardinals, Alex Clancy. Final segment, Locked On Cardinals, Alex Clancy here. Please go to the YouTube channel, search Locked On Arizona Cardinals, hit that subscribe button. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner _. Still trying to get my old one back. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. So here's the thing. I've only got about 7 or 8 minutes here. I could take the entire time and list every single name of fringe first-round talent / high second-round talent that's still available. And that's what I'm going to do, okay? So look at this. Wide receivers, A.D. Mitchell, Keon Coleman, Ladd McConkey, Jalen Polk, Troy Franklin, and there's a bunch of guys who are going to go a little bit later. Running backs, Trey Benson, Aldrick Estime, Jonathan Brooks, Braylon Allen, Blake Corum. All of the running backs are available, obviously. Offensive linemen, Jackson Powers Johnson, who was mocked to go in like the middle of the first round, still there, center and guard, would be a plug-and-play left guard for the Cardinals for the future. Christian Haynes, Patrick Paul, Zach Frazier, all of these guys were looked at to being first-round talent, and they're still there. Cooper Beebe, I mean, all of these guys that could make the Cardinals better immediately. A couple tight ends, doesn't matter. And then defensive linemen, Johnny Newton, Devondre Sweat, who I think is mocked a little bit higher than maybe what his talent provides. Marshawn Nealon off the edge, Brandon Dorless from Oregon, Braylon Trice, like Chris Braswell from Alabama. There are so many players that are still available. And a couple of those towards the tail end I mentioned were, third rounders. And then look at these DBs, Cooper DeJean from Iowa, still there, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Kamari Lassiter, Ennis Rakestraw. Like the Cardinals have their pick of whatever path they want to take. If Monti Ossenfort looks at 35 and says, you know what, Jackson Powers Johnson, you're our left guard for the next decade. The offensive line is set. It's set. It's scary set. And then if they choose to move off of Jalti Frold after this year and draft a left guard, they can move Howard Johnson to the center. And then Cooper DeJean's there. Like, here's the thing. What will day 2 bring? Monti Ossenfort is all about being opportunistic if the right opportunity arises. This today could shorten the timeline for the Arizona Cardinals rebuild by months. Not a full season, but by months. So sure, 66, 71, 90. Okay, you can stay there and watch 31 picks go by with all of these players just flying off the shelves. Or Monti Ossenfort could take those 3/3 and maybe future draft capital and move up into the 40s and grab another first-round player who dropped. The Cardinals could legitimately have 4 first-round picks drafted in the first 2 rounds. It's a ludicrous situation to be in because of how the first round fell. It's like people are drafting like they're running dynasty fantasy football leagues and not actual NFL teams. And the Cardinals could reap all the rewards, all the benefits. The Cardinals didn't trade back. They drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. They could still get the amount of draft capital as if they were to have traded back by getting guys who dropped into the second round. It's nuts. So what will day 2 bring? I'd be disappointed if there weren't fireworks. And not for watchability, not for excitement, not for bird in the hand, none of that. This is a situation Monti Ossenfort can pounce on. They've got more picks than anybody in the draft. Use them. You don't need to draft 4 players today. I'd much rather get Cooper DeJean, corner, and then trade back up and draft a defensive lineman or a pass rusher than just wait and pick in the 3rd round. This is an opportunity that doesn't come around often. And Monti Ossenfort needs to pounce and take advantage of it in some form or fashion. I'm juiced up, baby. Locked on Cardinals. Without you, there is no me. Remember that. I'll talk to you with a full draft recap on Monday. See you then.